WNST, Taos, Howard Bank, where they brought our Super Bowl coverage to you, as well as our friends at Royal Farms. Real fresh, real fast. Make sure you're downloading that ROFO app and get your reward points off the fried chicken and the gas and the coffee as well. Last time I saw this guy, it was the middle of a very, very long evening. It was right after the Eagles won, near all the podiums. I don't think he's really an Eagles fan. He covered the Ravens for a period of time. He covers the Eagles for Eagles Wire and the USA Today. He's one of our defending champions. And we welcome Turron Davenport back onto the program. Dude, if you're not Philadelphia by now, you are at this point, right? It was quite a little run the Eagles have had here the last 2 weeks, keeping guys like you busy up there, right?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I grew up in the area, so I'm Philadelphia. Not an Eagles fan, but a fan of the city, and it's been awesome the last couple of weeks just to see this place come alive the way that it has. So definitely, glad that this team was able to win and bring joy to so many people.
Taking it backwards from the moment I saw you, after the game, I think Jason Kelce and Torrey Smith were speaking at one point. There were podiums everywhere. But what has impressed you the most in all the aftermath? Look, we all saw the game, and we'll talk about the Philly special forever and all that. But a lot has happened, including Frank Reich and Joe DiCamillo. I mean, a lot of things have happened here in just a week and a half, and that's what happens to Super Bowl teams, including one hell of a parade, man.
Yeah, that parade was unbelievable. It was. I smile really big thinking about that. Just again, to see the people, and then to stand at the art museum and look out and see so many people dancing in unison as different songs played, it was an awesome scene. And then to see the joy on the guys, on their face when they saw these fans out there to support them. So it was great. I mean, there's been a lot that's happened, though, as you mentioned. You have Coach DiFilippo, who moved on to become the OC in Minnesota. You have Frank Reich, who became the head coach. I mean, and that's a Maryland guy, so I know that has some relevance down there. But it's going to take a lot to overcome the loss of those two guys. There's a lot that went into the play design that they put in. So they have a pretty big task at hand. But I think this team is in good shape as far as being able to recover from that.
In all of this and in chronicling all this, when did you get on the beat there? You were there during the Chip Kelly era, right?
No, I got there after. Yeah, you know what? It was a buy one get one free. Doug Peterson and me. That's how it worked.
But in the case of all of this, what's the best story to you? I mean, is Nick Foles? I mean, that'll never be topped. The backup quarterback coming in and playing like that. But boy, I wrote a book on Purple Rain too. On the Ravens, and you were around for part of that as well. There were so many stories. I mean, I sort of latched on to the Jason Kelce thing, and obviously with the Mummers thing, he became the star of the parade. But there are at least a dozen great stories, on that side of the ball, and redemption for all sorts of people, including my buddy Jim Schwartz.
Yeah, and that redemption part is definitely a story that kind of beats through the whole team. I think Nelson Aguilar's rebound has been awesome. He's a guy who's always been ultra talented. He was written off over the first 2 years. People talked down about him and everything, and he rebounded, and he was one of their best receivers this year. I think Zach Ertz is another good story. I remember, a good friend of the Ravens and many other teams in the AFC North, Vontaze Burfict. I remember in the Bengals game 2 years ago, Zach Ertz didn't quite make the best effort to block him, and people questioned his toughness. They questioned his physicality, and he vowed to never give them any reason to question again, and look who became a Super Bowl hero. So that's another good one. And through that whole trial, Zach Ertz has gotten closer to the fans, and it's great to see that too. So there are so many stories, so many. I mean, you look at Dad Jai, he was cast aside by the Dolphins. He came up here to Philadelphia, became a part of the running back program, and it was a really big part in their Super Bowl run. So there's story after story after story, and it is great to see that. Even Torrey Smith, I mean, within the season, Torrey had a nice turnaround. He had some issues with dropping the ball early, but I tell you what, in the playoffs, he was a clutch performer for the Eagles, and you saw in the NFC Championship, he caught that touchdown, and he's been a key part too. So I think really it's just a matter of just kind of like a Phoenix kind of situation where you have different guys rising from the ashes and shining.
In the case of losing DiFilippo and Frank Reich, I mean, look, I was with Frank Reich an hour after the game at the team party. I don't think he thought he was going. I think they knew DiFilippo was out anyway. Things are going to change here, and obviously Carson Wentz is going to come back. From the beginning, it's going to look like a different team right away, and it always does when you win a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, you remember from 2012 how things changed for the Ravens, and obviously in this case, you have some coaches that are gone. I think there's going to be some players that are gone. They're going to be a different-looking team, but ideally they have at least 20 starters returning. So they're in good shape, and it's going to be a little bit different. Every year, every team is different, but I think they're in good shape to defend their Super Bowl title. I mean, it's going to be a tough run, but this team is put together well, and the culture is still in place.
Turron Davenport is our pal. He's up there in Philadelphia with those cheesesteak lovers celebrating all things. It's like a tent city. Everything's green, right? Everything. It was kind of like when we won. It was like all purple. You talk about, did I remember the 13 season? We changed offensive coordinators in week 13. We didn't wait till the season ended.
Yeah.
I mean, we had turmoil around here leading up to this, and I can't imagine more turmoil than losing your starting quarterback out on the field in Los Angeles. I mean, I was in Pittsburgh that night for the Steelers-Ravens game, and, I saw Carson Wentz go down. Everyone was at a hushed tone in that little media room up there that Mr. Rooney made popular, and, you thought, well, that's the end of them. The resiliency shown by Nick Foles and being counted out, and more than that, just his story and watching him humbly walk into the Super Bowl party with his ball cap on as a hero, I don't think he's used to that kind of treatment, right? I mean, there's a humility and there's a real faith and a God thing that lies, underneath all of the belief systems of these Eagles guys, right?
Yeah, there's definitely a strong faith-based power that runs throughout the team, that's for sure. Nick Foles, actually, believe it or not, is one of the leaders in Bible study. He actually was one of the ones who originated having Bible study on Thursday nights, whereas they used to only have it on Saturdays. But he had that done. So, yeah, there's definitely strong faith that this team has, and it's understandable. I mean, these guys are all quality guys, and that's not to say that they don't do anything wrong, because no one's perfect. But you don't really see too many of these issues off the field that you see with other teams. So that's a great thing, and it's an example of their faith. And Nick Foles himself, has been that way even before he left the Eagles, or if he was traded from the Eagles. He was a guy that met with Pastor Theodore, the team chaplain, and made sure that guys had opportunities to get the scripture and, and get the word for the week. So it's just a continuation that you see now. And I think that's something that helped him be at peace through this whole thing and put things in perspective. And he's done a great job of it.
Turron Davenport joining us here from USA Today and Eagles Wire. You, of course, can follow him out on Twitter as well. He writes books at @Davenport_NFL. What makes Doug Peterson so special? I mean, you were around Harbaugh. You've been around a couple of coaches here in your journalism time. Backup quarterback, a whole team led by backup quarterbacks, including Frank Reich, and, backup quarterback catching the Philly special and all that. The Peterson thing, I don't know that everybody was convinced he was going to be a great NFL head coach, right?
I think the same thing that makes John Harbaugh a great coach makes Doug Peterson a great coach. And that's the ability to communicate with the players. That's the ability to allow them to not say how it goes, but allow them to have say in how things work. And putting those emotional deposits. I mean, Coach Harbaugh knows everything about everybody on this team as far as family and all that's concerned. And that's just the same way that Doug Peterson is. So when you have a guy that's emotionally invested in you, you are naturally going to emotionally invest in him. And believe it or not, you play just a little bit harder for these kind of guys. Doug Peterson, John Harbaugh, these are guys that I know players on their respective teams will run through walls for them. And that means a lot. And I think that's the same thing that makes Doug Peterson such a great coach. And I kind of sensed that early. I was fortunate. I was fresh coming out of, seeing Coach Harbaugh and how he interacted with the players for 2 years. And I saw those same type of things with Doug Peterson, whereas, he's not a father figure, but he's like that uncle that you hate to disappoint. And that's how both of those guys are. So that's what makes them so great.
Emotional intelligence, right? That was what the Jeff Lurie called it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think it was refreshing for a lot of guys that were already in the building, because Chip Kelly was a guy who, from what I've been told, didn't really speak to guys, in the locker room, didn't speak to guys in the hallway. And it was just a business relationship.
Well, that's a Belichick thing, right? I mean, we would look at Belichick from the outside for all of his success. We would say on the outside he doesn't have any emotional intelligence because he clearly is not a people person in that way, right? He's a football guy, but he's certainly not most people's cup of tea, I would say. But he manages to bring in people that maybe don't need to be coddled, right? I mean, maybe there's a way of scouting that they can handle that Belichick-Saban way a little differently than handling it, let's say, on the other spectrum, the Dick Vermeil way, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely on that side of the spectrum where, he brings in businessmen, and that's who he has on the team. I think there's a number of guys that have a relationship with Belichick. Is not as prevalent as, the hands-on players, coaches that you mentioned in Vermeil, that I mentioned in Peterson and Harbaugh. But it's just one of those things where that's the Patriots way, and it's interesting. Lane Johnson, had those comments about some of the guys acting like robots, and you definitely saw that in the Super Bowl, that week leading up to it. You saw contrast in personalities.
Turron, best part of it for you, I mean, friends, family, seeing tears. I mean, the part I'll always remember was actually standing next to you when Jason Kelce came out there. Jason Kelce, I don't want to say made me cry, but I was, verklempt, or I mean, I was choked up. I mean, I had a little dangle in my eye just hearing him after the game, and I can't say. I mean, I've been in those circumstances many, many times to see the power of the emotion that kind of overtook the big guy. I'll always remember that moment.
Oh, for sure. I'll always remember it too, and it's just something that I love football, and I love the things that it inspires within people, and this is an example. This is a guy who was written off, a guy who didn't have as many opportunities as other people coming out of high school and whatnot. And you just saw just all that just come out, because he, as he said, reached the pinnacle of his career, a Super Bowl champion of his profession. And I think that's what's great about sports, the fact that it will allow people to feel those type of emotions. And it will teach people the lessons that it teaches. I mean, look at Nick Foles and the whole thing about failure, where he says,
"Oh my God,
you gotta fail over and over before you're successful."
Sam Farmer, shared that on a written sheet of paper, and it had 8 million shares. I mean, it was crazy the next day. But I saw it, and I thought, man, this is something you give to your kids, right? I mean, there's real wisdom there above and beyond. Hey, we won the Super Bowl. Let's go eat a cheesesteak and get hammered, right?
Yeah, for sure. And that's the thing that's so great about this group of guys winning, because there's so many lessons that you could pull from their success. So it just tells you and shows you how football is bigger than just a game. I don't think that there's any sport that you could learn as much from. And it's just great to see these guys as living examples of different principles that we teach our children. You could point to these guys as examples, and that's the awesome thing about it.
Well, next time I'm up there in Filthy for whatever concert I'm seeing or hockey game in the parking lot, whatever, at some point I will get used to seeing Eagles world champions. And as much as I've always hated the fans and and not dug that, there really was something special about seeing Jim Schwartz come out of that locker room. My friend David Katz has a video of me hugging Schwartz coming out of the locker room, and Joe Douglas. And I did something that I didn't even do when the Ravens won, brother. I went from the stadium to the party straight to the airport. I had a 5:20 flight. We were on the 2:30 a.m. bus out of the team party. So I partied like the Ravens won the Super Bowl, even though it was the Eagles. But it was a wonderful experience, and I'm still kind of taking it all in myself 90 miles away here at Turron. And we will definitely be checking in. I'm sure I'll be seeing you. We're freezing our tails off out there in Indianapolis a couple weeks from now.
Yes,
the Combine, Luke and I will be out there. Hey, it's NFL, not for long, right? I mean, the championship's great and all, but 2 weeks from now, you got to get ready to draft again, right?
Yeah, time to turn the page already.
Hey, Torrey Smith's already running around down here doing his charity turn for his basketball game. So, it is not for long, and those rings will be coming in, and we'll be seeing you again soon here in the spring. Thanks for coming on, Turron.
Yeah, for sure. Anytime, man. I always appreciate it.
Turron Davenport, @Davenport_NFL. He's out at the Eagles Wire and at usatoday.com. You can find me out in the buyatoyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. And don't forget, our Ray Lewis bus trip is headed out to Canton, Ohio. Brian Dawkins going to the Hall of Fame for the Eagles fans as well. On sale now, including the Thursday night game against the Chicago Bears on August 2nd. We have an A, a B, and a C trip. You can read all about it under the Road Trips tab at WNST.net. When the Orioles decide to trade Manny Machado, you'll get it first on the WNST Tech Service. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Of course, Dennis Colazzos will be here on Thursday from 3 until 5 driving you home. It is the SSV on WNST. I am Nestor. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, anywhere you stream, we scream. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 at WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports and whatever else we want.